Once upon a time, in a bright and busy village, there lived a humble couple named Amina and Baako. Their home, though small and simple, was filled with warmth and love. Amina was known for her gentle beauty and a kind smile that could brighten anyone's day. Baako, with his strong frame and caring nature, was admired by many. Together, they were blessed with 4 beautiful daughters, each one a sparkling gem in their modest life. Despite their happiness, Amina and Baako struggled with poverty. Baako worked tirelessly on other people's farms, earning just enough to feed his family. Amina, too, contributed by fetching water, washing clothes for others, and selling goods in the market. Their daughters, full of life and laughter, were growing up quickly, and the couple often worried about how to provide for their education. Books, pencils, and school fees were constant concerns, and many times, the girls had to return home early from school because they couldn't pay the fees. Yet, despite these hardships, their home was a sanctuary of joy. The sound of little feet running around and the laughter that filled the air made their hearts swell with love. Amina and Baako never lost hope. Every night under the twinkling stars, they would sit outside their small house, hold hands, and dream of a better future for their beloved daughters. One sunny morning, Baako felt a heavy weight in his heart. Determined to find a way to improve his family's life, he decided to visit his friend in the neighboring village, hoping for some assistance. As he walked under the vast blue sky, his thoughts were filled with images of Amina and their daughters. He knew he had to do something, but he wasn't sure what. When Baako reached his friend's home, he was greeted with a warm smile. Baako shared his struggles, asking for help. His friend, instead of giving him money, offered something more valuable, a lesson. "Baako," he said, "I won't just give you fish. I'll teach you how to fish so you'll never be hungry again." Though Baako didn't fully understand, he listened carefully, hoping for a solution. His friend then took him to see an old man known as the herbalist, who lived deep in the forest. The herbalist's house was peculiar, covered in strange symbols and surrounded by unusual plants. As Baako stepped inside, a shiver ran down his spine. The air was thick with the scent of herbs and something else he couldn't quite place. The herbalist, with twinkling eyes, listened to Bako's story. "I can help you become very rich," the herbalist said, "but it comes at a price." Baako, eager to know more, asked what he needed to do. The herbalist looked at him seriously and said, "You must use your children in the ritual. They won't die, but they will suffer." Baako was horrified. The thought of harming his children was unbearable. "I can't do that," he protested. "I want money to make my children's lives better, not to harm them." But the herbalist's next words sent a chill through him. "Now that your eyes have seen and your ears have heard, if you walk away, you won't make it home." Feeling trapped and desperate, Baako reluctantly agreed, hoping that somehow things wouldn't be as bad as they seemed. The herbalist gave him a small pouch of black powder and instructed him to mix it into his daughter's food. As Baako walked home, the weight of his decision felt heavier than any burden he had ever carried. When Baako returned from the herbalist, he was quiet and withdrawn. With a heavy heart, he followed the herbalist's instructions, mixing a small amount of the black powder into his daughter's food. He prayed fervently that it wouldn't harm them and that everything would be all right. The next day, a strange and ominous wind swept through the village, rattling doors and shaking trees. Everyone talked about the unusual wind, but for Bako's family, it brought something far worse. Their eldest daughter, known for her bright smile, suddenly lost her sight. She cried out, saying that everything had gone dark. Bako's heart shattered into 1,000 pieces. Though he wanted to believe it was just a strange coincidence, deep down, he knew it was because of the black powder. The villagers whispered about the wind and the sudden blindness of Bako's daughter, but no one dared to confront him directly. Then, on a day that felt eerily quiet, a mysterious man dressed entirely in black arrived at the village. He carried a large, heavy sack and walked directly to Bako's house. Without a word, the man handed the sack to Baako and Amina, instructing them not to open it until he had left. Curious and hopeful, they waited until the man was out of sight before opening the sack. To their astonishment, it was filled with shiny golden coins. For a moment, their worries melted away, and they danced with joy, thinking their troubles were finally over. But as Amina looked at her now blind daughter, a chill ran through her. The wealth brought by the mysterious man seemed to be a blessing, but it had come at a terrible cost. Bako tried to reassure her, saying it was just a twist of fate. But he alone knew the dark truth. The riches had been bought with a price too high, and the shadow of that price began to loom over their once happy home. With the newfound wealth, Bako and Amina's lives changed dramatically. They bought large farms and became the most successful merchants in the market. Their home, once small and humble, transformed into a grand mansion, and their daughters were dressed in the finest clothes, enjoying the luxuries that came with their new status. The villagers began to refer to their daughters as princesses because of their wealth and elegance. However, despite the riches, a deep sadness lingered in their home. Their eldest daughter remained blind, and Amina often begged Bako to use some of the money to seek help from a healer. But Bako, weighed down by guilt and fear, always refused. "It's her destiny," he would say, his heart heavy with the burden of his decisions. 2 years passed, and while the family's wealth grew, so did the shadow over their hearts. The herbalist summoned Bako once again, and this time the demand was even greater. The next sacrifice had to be their second daughter. Bako's heart sank, but the herbalist's warning echoed in his mind. If he refused, he would lose everything and go mad. Reluctantly, Bako agreed, and once again, he mixed the black powder into his daughter's food. The next morning, their second daughter lost her ability to speak and hear. The family was devastated, and Amina cried for her child. But Bako repeated the same words, "It's her destiny." A few days later, the mysterious man in black returned, leaving another sack of gold at their door. Bako and Amina were rich once more, but the price they had paid weighed heavily on their hearts. Amina began to grow suspicious of Bako's actions, but she remained silent, unsure of what to believe. As time passed, the pattern repeated itself. A visit to the herbalist, a new affliction for another daughter, and a visit from the man in black with his cursed gifts. With each cycle, the family's wealth grew, but so did the silence and sadness in their home. Laughter became rare, and smiles were strained, as if they were trying to remember how they used to curve. Amina watched her daughters, once full of mischief and joy, now move through their days with a quiet heaviness. She noticed how Bako's once bright eyes had grown darker with each secret he kept buried, each deal he struck in the shadows. She knew something was terribly wrong, but she couldn't understand why their daughters were suffering while they had so much wealth. One day, Amina decided to follow Bako as he left their home. Hiding behind trees and bushes, she watched as he made his way to the herbalist's hut. From a distance, she listened carefully as Bako and the herbalist spoke in low voices. Her heart pounded as she overheard the terrible truth. The sacrifices Bako had made were the cause of their daughter's suffering. Amina was horrified. The man she loved, the father of her children, had done something unspeakable. She felt a mix of anger, sadness, and fear. She wanted to run away and tell everyone, but she was too scared. The herbalist had warned Bako that they would both go mad if the truth came out. When Bako left the hut, Amina quickly hid, watching him return home with heavy steps. She stayed behind for a moment, trying to gather her thoughts. She knew she couldn't tell anyone without risking her life and the safety of her children. Amina returned home with a heavy heart, looking at her daughters with deep sorrow. She knew she had to find a way to protect them, but she felt powerless. Time passed, and the family's wealth continued to grow, but the cost weighed heavily on Amina's heart. Then one day, Bako was summoned by the herbalist once more. Amina's heart sank as she knew what this meant. At the herbalist's hut, Bako was told that it was time for the final sacrifice, his youngest daughter. The herbalist warned that if Bako refused, all the wealth they had gained would disappear, and they would be left with nothing. Bako felt his heart shatter. His youngest daughter was his pride and joy. She was the light of his life, the one who had kept his spirits up even during the darkest times. The thought of harming her was unbearable, but the fear of losing everything was too great. Reluctantly, Bako agreed to the final sacrifice, knowing that he was sealing his family's fate. That evening, he mixed the black powder into his youngest daughter's food, his hands shaking as he did so. Amina watched him, her eyes filled with tears, knowing that this was the end. The next morning, their youngest daughter fell into a deep, unbreakable sleep. No one could wake her, and Amina's cries filled the house. Bako tried to comfort her, but his own heart was too heavy with guilt. As the days passed, the family received one final visit from the man in black, who left a massive sack of gold at their door. But this time, the wealth brought no joy. Their home, once filled with laughter and love, was now a place of silence and sorrow. The wealth that had once seemed like a blessing now felt like a curse, and Bako and Amina were left to live with the consequences of their actions. Years passed, and the once vibrant home of Bako and Amina had become a cold and lonely place. The wealth that had once brought them joy now weighed on them like a heavy burden. The villagers, once envious of their riches, now avoided the house, whispering about the curses that seemed to haunt it. Bako and Amina's daughters, once so full of life, were now shadows of their former selves. The eldest remained blind, the second still unable to speak or hear, and the youngest lay in a deep, unending sleep. Their once beautiful faces had grown pale, their laughter and smiles long gone. Bako, once a proud and loving father, had become a broken man. He spent his days wandering the empty halls of their mansion, haunted by the choices he had made. Amina, too, was a shadow of her former self. The love that had once filled their home had been replaced by an unbearable sadness. One day, unable to bear the guilt any longer, Bako visited the herbalist one final time. He pleaded for a way to undo the curses, to return his daughters to their former selves, but the herbalist only shook his head. "You chose wealth over your family," he said. "Now you must live with the consequences." Bako returned home, defeated. He knew there was no way to undo what had been done. He and Amina were left to live out their days in the mansion, surrounded by the wealth that had cost them everything they held dear. As the years passed, Bako and Amina grew older. Their daughters, still under the effects of the herbalist's curse, remained unchanged. The once proud family had become a cautionary tale, a warning to others about the dangers of greed and the cost of sacrificing what truly matters in life. The villagers, though still fearful of the mansion, often told the story of Bako and Amina to their children. They warned them never to value wealth over family, to always cherish what is truly important in life. As for Bako and Amina, they lived out the rest of their days in solitude, haunted by the choices they had made. The mansion, once filled with laughter and love, had become a place of sorrow and regret. And so, the story of Bako and Amina became a lesson for all who heard it, a reminder that wealth, when gained at the expense of what truly matters, can bring nothing but misery and sorrow. I hope you enjoyed the tale. If so, please like the video, share it with your family and friends, comment on it, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell for more enchanting tales like this one. Goodbye.